welcome to Askimo TV. We are talking with Dr. Neil Sankar, a physician who currently works in the field of clinical development in California. Hello, Dr. Sankar, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, hi, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Dr. Sankar, as a drug developer with a physician background, could you shed some light on how a physician responds to a new drug on the market? Are they skeptical? Are they excited?
So it depends. It's a very good question. It depends on the information what is being given to the physician. So it depends on the the available safety data, the efficacy data of the drug, how effective the drug is. So for diseases which have less curative properties, some of these drugs, if they are efficacious, a lot of the doctors are kind of waiting to get hold of this drug to give to their patients. So it depends on the drug and the disease area it's targeting.
Okay. And once a drug is produced and sold on the market, do doctors who prescribe them then become liable to their effects, if adverse, on their patients?
Yes, I mean, they have to make sure, the doctor is always liable for what is being prescribed to the patient, because it needs to, it has to make the scientific sense why he's doing that. On the flip side, normally when these drugs are manufactured, they are what is called as labeling. They have, these drug manufacturers come out with labeling for these particular drugs which come to the market. So if there is a labeling issue that, it's being falsely marketed with a label which this drug is not supposed to be used, and if the doctor uses it based on the labeling, then to an extent the manufacturer would be held responsible at that point.
Right, okay, I understand. Okay. In a place like the UK where medicine is socialized, is the government in charge of accepting a new drug, or does each medical institution have their own say?
In the UK system, obviously you need to get the approval from the, from the regulatory body, which is, I think it's called as the European Medicines Agency. And then I think that each territories may have their own guidance based on, their local guidelines. So it depends on, it would primarily depend on, they need to get the approval from the main regulatory authority. But then, there may be some, regulations which it would go by the local guidelines.
Okay. And what are the levels of government regulation and interference when it comes to new drugs? And how is it different from a country with private healthcare versus one with social healthcare?
It's both are two different entities. So when you're looking at a private hospital setting, the guidances are kind of, even though they have the whole regulatory guidance, they do also have their own, based on the insurance policies, what the insurance payment would benefit, because, a lot of these are driven by the insurance payments, reimbursements. So it will all depend on how the insurance, it revolves on the insurance payments and the reimbursements.
Okay. And finally, doctors will often supply the generic brands of certain kinds of drugs. And surely this implies that they're just as good as the name brands. And if so, what's the point of commercial drugs, and why are they so successful?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, I lost you. I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat it, please?
Sure. Doctors often supply the generic brands of certain kinds of drugs, and surely this implies that they are just as good as the named brands of drugs. So what is the point of commercial drugs, and why are they so successful?
The generic drugs actually have to, the policies, the guidances are that the generic drugs have to have the same safety, efficacy, like the regular drug. So, unless the regular drug is developed, they go through a patency period of 10 to 12 years. So, the patency at that time protects anybody from copying or manufacturing generic drugs. When the generic drugs come out, the advantage is that companies like insurance companies are benefited because that substantially reduces the insurance payment. So normally when you have a generic drug in the market, the insurance companies would only pay you the price for the generic drug based on the generic drug. You are covered only pricing based on the generic drug. If you will still insist on getting the original manufactured drug, then the patient has to come out with the premium, whatever the price difference on with the original manufacturer, because the generic drugs are substantially cheaper than the original commercial drug.
Okay, very interesting, Dr. Sankar. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome.